If you're someone who is actively applying for a new job, then you're very well aware of all of the hoops that you're having to jump through just to try and get your foot in the door, let alone the time that that whole process is taking just to get a response, or in most cases, not even a response. And even if a response does come through, how impersonal that response is. But what if I told you there is a workaround? And with the right strategy and a bit of practice, you could avoid this whole rigmarole process that you're currently going through to get your foot in the door, land some interviews, and bag a job that you're going to love. I'm Jacob, and of the 3,000-ish jobs that I've placed across the UK and Australia, I estimate that probably only a third of those jobs were actually advertised online in the usual way, and probably only a fraction of those were actually applied for and obtained through the usual job application process. And the reason for that is not because I've got some free pass that allows me to access jobs or do something illegal that other people aren't doing or anything like that. It's simply because I was acting as a recruiter, going after the decision makers to get the person I was working with through the door for an interview and into that job. So I'm here to give you the exact strategy that I've been using for years to actually find the people who wanted that job vacancy filled in the first place, how to find the boss, how to approach them, and exactly how to speak to them so that you as well can act as your own recruiter and get a great job. So firstly, why would you go out of your way to contact an employer directly in this way in the first place? Well, think of the job application process from the perspective of the employer. You work within a business or you run a business and you need a job doing. There's a job within your company that nobody in the company is able to do, or nobody has capacity to do that's currently employed by your company. So you pop an advert online thinking nothing of it. What you get back is hundreds and hundreds of applications from people all over the place. Most of the people probably don't even live in a commutable distance to that job. Some won't be qualified. Some have just fired out an application to fulfill some criteria set out by the government to receive their fortnightly pay. Some applications made by recruitment agencies who are just fishing for some knowledge so that they can align with the employer to work with them and charge them a hefty fee in the future. Some applications from AI, they're just bots, they're not real. You're faced with all of these things as an employer when you put a job up online. That's also not to mention the 2 or 3 layers below you as the hiring manager that the people who are applying have to get through to even get to you. So there's the talent acquisition team or recruitment team, probably who are listed on the advert. Not really sure what that does as a job, but it kind of fields people, I think, who come through that job application process. They screen them. They then come to HR to see if their documents, their legal working rights all stack up before obviously citing them. And then they get to you as the hiring manager. So what you're seeing as the hiring manager is a very slim proportion of the whole landscape of the applications that were made. So you're trusting this 2-3 level tiered process to do what it needs to do to get the best people who have applied, who are out there in front of you. It just doesn't really make sense. So as somebody in this position, think how much you would welcome after going through all of that nonsense, that whole process. So if somebody applied to you directly, dropped an email to your inbox, gave you a call directly, dropped a WhatsApp in your message box that was suitably qualified, wanted to work for your company, knew a lot about your company, and presented well, you are very, very likely to be very excited at that prospect, give them a lot of time, and probably get them through the door for an interview, and then probably offer them a job subsequently for that, bypassing the whole rigmarole of the process and getting somebody brilliant who actually comes to you. Now, I've been doing this for years. I've probably been in contact with thousands of employers to this point to get the number of people that I've helped into those jobs. And there's only been a handful of times, probably only actually 1 or 2, where an employer has actually spoken to me rudely whilst trying to do this for somebody I was working with, which is probably even worse than doing this for yourself. You're probably not going to get a negative response. Think about it again from the employer's perspective. If they were just going around saying, just apply online, don't talk to me, or if they're rude to you on the phone or via email or in person, think about the damage that then does to their reputation. Think about what you could then go out and say within the market about them having had that response. It just doesn't make sense. They will give you the time of day if you approach them in the right way. And if they don't, think really hard on if that's even a company you would like to work for based on the way that they've spoken to you that first time that you've even interacted with them. Next up is who you should actually be speaking to at the company to get your foot in the door and approach this in the right way. To make it easier, I'll start with who you don't want to talk to. Firstly, the talent acquisition team. So although this is a really fancy name for a job of kind of like a junior recruiter or kind of junior HR person, essentially all they're going to do is have a checklist for those jobs. And if you don't tick every single box or the vast majority of boxes or more boxes than another person who's applying, they're just going to say, no, this isn't for you. And they're not going to send your details then through to the boss who you need to get it to. You also probably don't want to speak to the EA or executive assistant of the boss, either on the team who is actually hiring or for the CEO or founder or big boss of the company. The EAs will take great pride in fielding anything from these guys. And if you apply to them or spoke to them on a Monday, for example, they're probably not even going to tell their boss till the Friday very proudly that they fielded some unsolicited call from somebody who wanted to work within the company they were probably just a recruiter. They'll take great pride in that, and you won't be able to get to the boss who actually you need to. The third person who I'd be wary of speaking to is the big boss of the company. So the CEO, the founder, or somebody very high up. Although they pull a lot of strings within the company, they probably don't have the time to give you the time of day or filter all the information down to the actual team that you want to work for in time. So you probably want to go directly in at that team leader level. Find out who is needing to have that role filled within their team and go after them. Next up is, how do we find this person? How do we find the boss and the person that we need to be getting in touch with? Well, the easiest thing for me to do here on a video like this, in a space like YouTube with all of these business gurus just spouting all of these motivational talks at you, is to give you a rah-rah pep talk of just call, or turn up on their door and bash down the door and demand that you speak to the person in charge and the hiring manager. But I think even if that worked for you, and then if you were stood in front of or had on the end of the phone line the person that you needed to speak to, that just wouldn't be a natural interaction to get to that point. You need to play to your own strengths, what feels comfortable to you, and go after that person in the way that you feel aligned with, to make sure that that interaction feels natural, that you come across in a genuine way. However, in some cases, you will need to go just one step beyond your usual comfort level. So if you're somebody who just hates speaking to people on the phone, or who really crumbles when you're in front of a person in person, then this is probably something that you need to just push yourself on, given the bigger picture goal that you have. What we're ideally looking for here is the direct phone number or email address of the person you'd be reporting to once you started the job. Now, 9 times out of 10, that person is not going to be listed on the job advert, but by reading the job advert really carefully, you can pretty much pluck out what team, what site, what department you would be assigned to in this role, so that that gives you the information to then go and dig a little deeper. If the advert itself does list that person, then great, you're off to a really good start. But if it doesn't, we're going to have to be a bit more creative. Can you use the company website, for example, to look through the pages of the About Me or the team section, or even get up an organizational chart if they have one, and try and pinpoint who you think it would be that you need to be in contact with? Could you just simply Google job adverts from that company, from that team, to maybe find that person's details on a previous advert? This works really well if that person has been promoted in the past couple of years. They were perhaps giving their details out more freely when they were in a slightly lower position a couple of years ago. So that might just give you something to go from. Just something weird that I often do is just to type in the name of the person you think you need with the letters PDF into Google. That often brings up old publications, newsletters, articles, media publications, that kind of thing, with some details about the person that you need to get hold of. It's surprisingly effective. And next, can AI help you? Can ChatGPT or Claude or whichever AI bot that you're currently using, could they help you just by plugging it in and asking, could they find the person and the contact details directly that you need? Just be a little bit wary of that, because in this kind of initial few years, it can just make things up if it can't find the exact information, so just tread lightly there. Worst case scenario, can you find the person on LinkedIn and just shoot them a very polite message, of which we can go through a template later? Or can you simply call through to the company and ask to speak very politely to the person who you think will be heading up that team, just to have a chat? So what I'm going to do now is just show you 3 templates of what you can say, essentially your script for contacting somebody in this position via message or email, or even exactly what to say over the phone. So I'm going to pop them up on the screen. I'm just going to flick my camera over. feel free to pause, take it all in, use it how you will. This is included in a bigger toolkit that's available on my website. It's called the DIY Toolkit. It's a full end-to-end guide of how you bag yourself a great job from the very start to the very finish, from the initial criteria, how to find out what you actually want for a job, all the way through to how to follow up and how to pick between offers as you get them. This is just a small, very small section of that. So if you're keen for the bigger bit, then head over to my website. I'd love to see you there and I'd love to see you using it. So here are the exact scripts that I recommend talking to employers with. There's one for a cold message, there's one for a cold email, there's one for a phone call, and I actually forgot that I included an in-person approach script if you're feeling a bit more fancy. I've only got a few minutes here, so I'm just going to whiz through them. It starts with a few points on what each interaction needs to include, so feel free to read that now, and then I'll just scroll down and let you read the rest. So here's what each interaction should contain. There's 7 elements. And then here, coming into the cold message template, just a few dot points and then an example below. Here's what to include on a cold email, followed by a quick example here. And here's the phone call script here. So how to introduce yourself in the best way and what to say and how to direct things once the conversation is flowing. Obviously, it's incredibly difficult to predict how a conversation like this over the phone is going to go. There's a million different variations that this could be, but what's here is based on hundreds, if not thousands, of very similar calls that I've done over my time in recruitment. So hopefully it will go down in this way and it will work in your favor. Couple of different scenarios there as to how the conversation will be going. And then finally, the in-person approach script, which is quite similar actually to the phone call script. You're kind of going to introduce yourself in a very similar way and chat through your experience and what's in it for them in a very similar way to what you're going to say on the phone. But here's an example of how that could look different when you're actually standing there in front of somebody. Okay, so there we have it. Everything you've just seen behind me there is in full on my website in the DIY toolkit, where obviously you can go through it a little bit more slowly and a little bit more at your own pace and tweak it even more to your position and the roles that you're going for. I hope that helps. And of course, as always, do have an updated version of your CV ready to hand to ping out as soon as the opportunity arises. I know that CVs aren't the be all and end all, and hopefully the conversations that you have with these decision makers becomes such a thing that your CV just then becomes the final ticket for you to explain exactly who you are on paper at that final stage. But having the updated CV just to hand just saves on that timepiece. You then don't have to come away and spend a day updating it to then delay things later on. Also, I'd really advise having a list, a well thought out process or script or note, however you want to do it, of the exact reasons that you want to work for this company and in this position. This is going to help you massively when you do actually get a chance to talk to that person. Without this, you might just be floundering a little bit. It would be good to have this to hand, to practice beforehand, so that when you get the chance to have this chat, things are just flowing. Now, hopefully all of this bags you at least an interview, and the interview process and preparation is a whole other video in itself, which we'll save for a later date. But I hope this one at least has been helpful. YouTube's going to pop another great video just above my shoulder, so if you found that one useful, you'll probably find one of those useful too. Again, everything is available on my website, how to get hold of me, how to work with me, the DIY toolkit. There's some links below. Thanks so much for watching and all the best.